Welcome back. I'm Connie Sokol, your host, and I am so delighted today to talk about this topic with an amazing woman who I have just recently met, and I love her already. I am loving this topic because I feel like it's something that we kind of don't talk about. Sometimes, like weight or finances, we don't really want to talk about self-worth because we're supposed to be pretending that we have self-worth and we know we have self-worth and we're just fine. But we're going to talk about the reality of that today and the impact of feeling that self-worth. It's one thing to know it mentally, but it's another thing to feel it and come from that space of the way that you live from that knowledge. So today I have Jennifer Starr Buss. So great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
And I want to get you to get to know her because she is incredible. She is the co-founder of Empower, Unite, and Strengthen, which is a nonprofit organization with the missions of helping individuals find empowerment, working as men and women to strengthen home and communities. And also there's a focus on an additional adjunct where they support women in rebuilding their safe home after displacement. So this woman has had experiences and knowledge and understanding and skills to be able to help women on so many levels. She helps women recover from sexual abuse and be able to deal with that. Also stories of hope and healing that they, in a radio show, a live radio show called Empowered with Des and Jen, fabulous healing stories of being able to understand what's happened and how to move forward. She's also the founder of A Hero's Journey, teaching others to take back the power in their life, and also has a bachelor's degree in psychology with a minor in family and human development, and has been speaking and working with children, with victims of domestic violence and abuse, and the foster care system and adoptions. And been doing this since like 2008 with her lepto. I mean, come on. But I love that she knows and gets the hand carts that women are pulling across the emotional planes in this day and age. And what do we do about it? There's a moment to be able to share and connect, and then there's the moving forward. And that's what we want to talk about here. Those things that make our self-worth feel diminished or that try to attack it, and how we can stay in that good, solid space. So Jennifer, let's just jump right in as I'm wont to. What are your thoughts about what women deal with right now? We see women's self-esteem and self-worth and their feeling of value, not feeling valued, just being so attacked right now with so many ways in society. What are you seeing women dealing with, and how they're being sort of, their self-worth is really being negated?
Sure. I think, I went through a period in my life where I was stuck in victim mode and all I could see was my own hardships and poor me and all of the things I had gone through. And as I've been able to step out of that, it's been incredible to see the amounts of women that are struggling with their own journeys, and maybe they're different than mine, but definitely major struggles with that self-worth and losing their self as a mother, or, being in a relationship that maybe they're not being treated as the queens that they are, or different things that have come up within relationships, or different things that have just kicked us down. And I think, I grew up in a culture where I was taught, and I taught, that you're God's daughter, your worth is divine, and all of these things. And mentally, I believed it. And I didn't even realize for a lot of years that, like, deep down in my heart, I didn't believe it fully for me. And I think a lot of people probably find themselves in that situation where they're realizing that there's some doubt there, that, like, this thing that they've long believed mentally, it just doesn't quite click completely internally. It's not something that they've completely bought on for themselves. And honestly, I see that in women staying in relationships that are maybe not healthy and not good for them and their children. You know, they they're not stepping into their power and their light and being able to be that, example for others that they could be, even their children, because they're just playing small. They're doubting, there's that internal, like, struggle of, like, knowing and yet doubting and not even realizing sometimes, I think, that doubt is there with the self-worth.
Absolutely. And I love the point that you make, that it's coming from that space. Your situation may be the same when you wake up tomorrow, but when you have this awareness and come from a space of knowing your divine self-worth, knowing who you really, really are. And I love the point you make. We can know it here, we can wear a medallion, we can have all those things, but if we're not feeling it, we're not going to make choices coming from that genuine space. And it does change how we do it. It doesn't mean you suddenly up and leave a relationship. It means you change the boundaries or change the way you handle it. What were some of the things that shifted for you when you started to get this feeling and this true understanding? I think you mentioned to me you were in your 30s before you really got the connection, mind soul connection of, I have self-worth and I am a daughter of God. First of all, let's go back even farther. What led you to get that? What led you to really connect those two?
I would say, like I said, my whole life, it's been drilled into my head. It's something that I've heard and that I believed. I had something really traumatic happen in my teenage years that really kind of sent me back and caused me to feel tarnished and less than. And I didn't realize the extent that I was doubting my worth from that moment forward. I didn't realize how much that had impacted me because I felt like I'm strong, whatever, like I can move on and it's not going to affect me. And I thought, in a lot of ways that was true, but I came to find out at about age 30, and I had some, I had already been through a divorce at a really young age. I married at 19, and by 22, he was out the door, had a change of plans, change of lifestyle, change of, I was left pregnant and with a baby. And over the next few years, I had a couple different relationships here and there where it seemed the theme was always like I was left stranded, like things are going great, things are going great, and suddenly where did you go? And that was just kind of this theme. And I actually was engaged, and he literally, we had dated nearly 2 years. He sent me an email 10 days before the wedding calling it off. And so I was just devastated, and all of these things created health problems for me. And all of this, I didn't realize this whole time that I was doubting my worth, and that so much of this boiled down to like this emotional trauma that I just had left. I didn't fully deal with it. I just thought I could be strong, move on. So it was about age 30. After all of this series of events and some struggles that I had had, I was working closely with a bishop at the time in my church, and it was through this process that I somehow was led to God on a deeper level than I ever had been. And my heart was just pricked to know that, like, no matter what you've been through in life, no matter what anyone's done to you, no matter what you've chosen into or done that you might view as wrong, like no matter what, like you are worthy of all of God's love, and that my worth could never be diminished no matter what. And that was huge for me. It was the first time in my life that I realized I had been doubting it all of these years. And I had been teaching other, young women that these truths that I didn't even fully buy into, I didn't even fully know for myself was true. And that was it was such a big turning point in my life, and a big aha moment of realizing, while I never dated and had relationships with horrible men, I did sell myself short a little bit. I did doubt my true worth, and the way that impacted all of those years, the way that will forever impact my two oldest children, that I, because of the marriage I chose into, and just that big impact that that decision had. And it was at that time that God was like, you have learned a truth that not everybody comes to learn, and you get to go share that. And I just feel so passionate about helping other women. I think of 60-year-olds who are still stuck in that. And I think of those, fresh 15-year-olds that are still figuring out and learning who they are, and to help whoever along their journey, wherever they're at, know this truth is just something that I feel so strongly about, because it is life-changing, completely life-changing, when you know this deep down in your soul, that you're a daughter of God and your worth will never be diminished. It changes all of those. It changes the decisions that you make.
I love that you bring that up, that I love this, that nothing can diminish that. And I think sometimes we as women especially feel like we need to earn our worth, that we need to, if we did this and we do that, and then we check this box and we've done all the laundry, and then we can have a few minutes of joy right before our head hits the pillow. Or as long as we do X, Y, and Z, and we seem like we're following all the rules, then we have worth. And that is not what the divine message is. And especially for those that are listening that have a faith-based feel about life and a faith-based lens, that as we see that divine worth, you're exactly right, that is the essence of who we are, is divine. So that even decisions that we make, we know that still stays there. And that leads to the reason for the Savior's atonement. It's right there for us to partake of, and to feel the cleanness again, and to feel the peace of things either we've done or have been done to us. And we know 1 out of 3 have been sexually abused. You look around your neighborhood and go, okay, the stats don't lie. So how many women, like you said, are walking around and carrying, whether it's the loss of a spouse or a sibling or parent, or it's financial trauma, or whatever it is, whatever the trauma is, we're all walking around with this trauma. And if we equate trauma, experiencing trauma to now our self-worth is diminished, we're going to feel that way our whole lives, because that's life. That's the challenges, and that's what we're here for, is to get through those. So I love that you bring up, first and foremost, get this whole concept that your self-worth does not change. Okay, now let's talk about how do we utilize that to make better decisions. Because like you said, from the space of feeling lower self-worth, maybe you made this decision to marry this person, but it's not a judgment thing. You can put it on a chair and go, it makes total sense. This traumatic thing happened to me. I made this decision after it. And now I can use the Savior's atonement to be able to feel better and get happiness and peace, because he wants that for me, especially something that was totally out of my control. So what do you do now to help women to feel and make decisions from that place of self-worth? Like the women that are listening, how can you help them get to that space?
I think, for me, I don't even know what I would say to somebody who might not even realize that they're not in that space. Cause I don't think I realized until I realized that I had been doubting it all of these years. And so I think just maybe taking an internal like check of like, where am I? Do I really believe this? I can say it and I can say that I believe it and I can teach it, but do I believe it for me? Or is there something in my life that I think might be except for that time that, or whatever. And like you said, like everybody experiences trauma, whatever it is, that like there's some, and I didn't see this when I was in my victim state. I thought everyone's life was so great. And, sure, some people had hard things, but nothing compared to mine, and as I've reached the age I'm at, I've been able to see and hear from so many close friends, like some huge trials that they're going through that they're not even sharing outwardly, that so many people are dealing with such big, deep things that just take inventory of yourself. Like, where do I sit? Am I doubting my worth? Am I doubting? Because like you said, it might not mean like I'm going to up and leave my marriage. It might mean like things change a little, things look a little different, like when you know your worth. And so just kind of taking that inventory, realizing, recognizing, being able to fully come to accept that truth. And then I love to teach when I speak or when I'm working with women, I love to teach the four. Well, it used to be three, it's turned into four. I've come to realize the 4 R's of becoming the hero of your life's journey instead of being the victim in your story. And if I can, I'll just briefly touch on each of those points. Okay.
Please.
So the first one is reaching up or reaching out. Because I think when you're stuck in that trauma or you're stuck in that like self-pity or doubt or lack of worth or whatever it is, like there's always someone that's been there, that's been through what you're going through. And at the very least for me, sometimes that was my savior. That was just learning to have that connection with him. But there's mentors, there's friends, there's I can guarantee there's somebody in your community that you might not know yet, but as you start to like pray and find, like figure who, like just kind of feel for who you can be led to, there's somebody that's going to be able to help you, that's been able to be where you're at and can show you what they've done. And that can be huge. Just having, I think so many women, I recently have had someone very dear to me that I love turn to me, and she's been carrying a secret and a burden for like 10 years. And just having that, being able to release that and being able to share that with somebody is huge. And I think it's a huge step to healing and recovery and everything that we're talking about today, is being able to talk about it with somebody. So that's the first one. The second one, release the burden. And for me, that means being able to just kind of dump that heavy burden, being able to find forgiveness if somebody's hurt you, or find forgiveness for yourself if you're being extra hard on yourself for things that, I think we all do the best we can in the moment. And so being able to have some grace and forgiveness for the things and the decisions we've made, and some of those really big, deep, traumatic hurts that others have inflicted on us that might seem like the unforgivable. I hear people say, if such and such happens, I could never forgive. That's unforgivable. And really that's a poison and a burden that we're carrying ourselves. And that keeps us in victim mode. And that doesn't allow for the healing and the things that we're talking about to be able to really discover and step into our strength and our light when we're hanging on to that. So that's number 2. The third one is rejoice. And for me, that looks a lot like finding gratitude. And sometimes that's hard. Sometimes it feels like life 100% stinks and there's not one thing to find gratitude for. But just looking at those little things, like whether it's your children or whether it's, your health, or just whatever little, whether it's just having, I mean, traveling to some poor countries, I come to realize like how much just a warm house, even if it's a tiny house, even if it, it might not be the fanciest or anything, just those little things that we take for granted, like finding gratitude for a heater and a soft bed and clothing, and any little thing that you can, until you can find gratitude for more and more. And ultimately, I know it sounds crazy, but I've come to find gratitude for my huge trials, because they've helped me become the person I am. They've, we talked about these last couple of years have been a trial for me, and I've been able to bounce back and handle it and recover because of the trials I've been through before. And so I really can have gratitude for that. It's given me empathy to be able to help others, that I wouldn't have had I not been through those. And so that sometimes can feel like a huge stretch. There's no way I could ever be grateful for this massive trial that I'm enduring, but really it's possible. And when you can get to that point, it's kind of magical. But until then, just those, like I said, those little things, little tiny things, being grateful for each moment, and the little things, sometimes we have to stretch, but the more we can do that, the more we see even more to be grateful for. And then, like I said, I've added a fourth, and that's just kind of come like, I kind of went through a period of time where I thought my trials are behind me. I've gone through some big, hard things, and that's now finally my time to kind of live in that happily ever after. Like life's going to settle down and be easy. And I found that that's not really the case. And so this kind of final point that I've added is to rise triumphantly again and again, to know that like, no matter how many times life beats you down, that you get to step back up, and that you get to, you still are in charge of your life, no matter how much your life feels out of control, that you get to take back that control every time. And just the thought that you can always take one more step. Sometimes life feels so overwhelming and you feel so knocked down. You've climbed a mountain and you've climbed it again, and then you get kicked down again. And can I really do that again? And just the thought of like, you can do it one step at a time, maybe not focus on that tall mountain, but just the next step. And as you take one step at a time, like, you definitely can rise triumphantly again and again. So those are some of the tools that I love to share, to just kind of step out of that victimhood, or that lack of stepping into our greatness and knowing our worth, and our, being able to handle these hand carts that you talk about, because they are heavy, and I don't think that they're going to stop. I think that we just got to buckle down and do the best that we can, because it's just kind of the world we're living in right now, major trials.
And I love, those are 4 great points. We're going to go touch back on those for a quick second and help the women know what that could look like for them to do right now. I love this whole concept of, it's so true that the things that we've gone through can be the very vehicles for us to find our purpose and fulfill it. And this is what I do with my purpose-filled women, helping them go back to their stories and then say, what has that helped you to become? And what has it helped you to do or want to do? We train disciple thought leaders so they can get out and they can go and share their message, so to help their people that are going to respond to that. And you're exactly right. We would not have the ability to do that had we not gone through those things, because people can feel if you're authentic, if you have depth of character and knowledge about that thing. I know when I had a miscarriage, I could talk with someone and they'd be like, when they had a miscarriage, but they just got it. We got each other right away. And the thought of taking that, I have a friend who suffered some miscarriages that were really difficult, and she ended up creating a thing with these angel boxes where she now helps other women to be able to move through that transition with these gift box things. I mean, how would that have come about if that, we don't have these trials? So I love that that's the overall thing. And I agree with you that as we see it through that divine lens of, these things are purposeful and I get to choose what to do with it, our self-worth just shoots up the chart, because we can feel it's not, I had something done to me or I did something stupid. It's more of, oh, this life experience, I'm here to help others, help myself and others to get back to this place I want to be, or to be this kind of person that I want to be. And this is the tool, this is the vehicle. It makes sense. So
Right. To me, it's like, it makes it worth it. Like the hell that you've gone through, the intense pain and misery and all the things, like when you can then step into a place of helping or guiding others, or blessing someone else's life, it makes that worth it. It makes that, instead of just having to go through it for nothing, like, it makes it worth it when you can bless others through what we've been through.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I heard someone say that we go through something for ourselves the first time, and then after that, it's always for the blessing of someone else. And I agree. And just like you said, that fulfilled feeling, that purposeful, fulfilled, your soul is expanded when you help other people through something that was so devastating to you, that your healing is so intrinsically tied to their healing that way, that you're both bettered and healed by that choice to move forward in that way. I love this. Let's just start really quickly with reaching out. What does that look like for someone listening right now? It could be, like you were saying, reaching out to someone in an organization in your community, someone in your neighborhood, a trusted leader. I think one of these things of reaching out that you triggered for me was choosing that person wisely, choosing a safe person or a safe space, so that you're not just sort of rowing up on someone, but there's someone that you feel led to. And I love that you alluded to that. So being prayerful about who you can share that experience with and who can help you to move forward. So maybe asking, where will that lead? So being able to be in a space that it's going to help you. So I love.
Yes, and I think some, I think one of the tools of the adversary is to keep us stuck alone, right? And to keep us feeling like no one else is going to get it, or they're going to think you're crazy, or like everything's going to backfire, whatever it is, like, and so we just hang on to our little secrets and we don't reach out, but just like realizing that there are people out there, like you said, the right choices, there are, pray about it and feel that inspiration and know who you can reach out to. But keeping this like secrets, never, I feel like they're really never good.
Yes.
Anything that has to be kept secret is not usually a good thing. And so anytime you can share that with somebody, it can help so tremendously with that healing, and that, even helping you see. I think so many women are stuck in situations where they don't even realize how unhealthy it is, or they do, but they justify it. And just being able to talk to somebody else, and recognize, like, just kind of have that validation and things, like, can do so much for you. That, hanging on to it, keeping it a secret, doubting, like, I anyway, that was
Yes.
some thoughts that came to me. Was, I think a lot of us feel like we have that thought, but then we brush it away and we just keep
Yes.
thinking we can be strong, or we don't need to burden someone else, or whatever all those thoughts are that come through. But that
Absolutely. I love that. And in the reaching out, you bring up this point of get knowledge. Because I remember Sister Wendy Nelson said, she said, as a therapist, she said, when a woman said to me, she felt like something was wrong. She said, something was always really wrong. Like something was very, very wrong. So when a woman has that feeling of something's not quite right, just trust yourself that there's probably something that's really wrong. So go get knowledge. And I know that helped me, and that's helped a lot of other women, that when they started reading good quality books about mental illness or whatever it might be, they started seeing patterns and behaviors and going, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. This isn't just some random thing. This is actually a pattern, and it's an illness. So I love that you talk about reaching out, and that closely related, the releasing the burden of shame. I love how you called it our little secrets of being able to release those. And Brene Brown talks a lot about that, of just cleaning it out. I think about in the Latter-day Saints, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it's temples, and we have temples. And I love that it's so white and open and light, and there's not a corner that is hidden. I remember going to Notre Dame in Paris, and it was so dark, beautiful building, but just so dark inside, like just hardly you can see. And just the juxtaposition, that this light, that we can let go of those little secrets. So maybe and I love that you added on with that, forgiving yourself, relying on the grace of the Savior's atonement, and that forgiving yourself for maybe making poor decisions, or forgiving someone else who's done some of those things. Maybe a step in that is opening yourself up to that, like you were saying, opening up to that story, to that thing you've kind of shoved in a box in the closet, and in a safe space, being able to take that out and being able to get something cleaned out. I love that. The third one was rejoicing in gratitude. So maybe for those that are listening today, thinking about, what does that look like for you? What does gratitude mean? We've just had a beautiful challenge of give thanks that had 4.5 million posts. It was great. But I love that you bring up, this piece of gratitude of, even when it's hard and things don't look like there's a lot to be grateful for, when we dig deep. Is there something that you remember that was maybe a surprise to you, that as you were trying to practice gratitude, brought you a real sense of peace or happiness that you maybe hadn't looked at before, of in those difficult situations and coming to the places where you were experiencing emotional abuse, were there things that you realized you felt grateful for that you maybe hadn't looked at before, but were helping you?
I think something that goes, I didn't touch on this, but something that I tie into that rejoice piece too, that goes kind of hand in hand, is service. And it's really hard when you're feeling like your life is hard and you just need to vent or, cry or whatever. It's really hard to think there's other people out there that need you or that have it worse than you. But when I was able to kind of step into that space of service, or kind of putting off my woe is me moment for a moment to see something that somebody else was going through, or be able to find little ways to help. When we can get out, that's when we get outside of ourselves, and that's when we can step out and be like, whoa, like I've been having a major pity party, but there's really a whole world outside of my little reality right here, that when you can step into serving others and helping others and seeing what, for me, I was able to rejoice when I saw harder things that I perceived as harder, that others were going through, particularly like a child with you know a fatal illness, or things like that, that I just thought, oh my gosh, I can't imagine that, and being able to then find some gratitude for the things in my life, like my children and their health, and things like that I think we take for granted. I think we get so focused on like the problem that we take for granted some of these other things that isn't something that others take for granted because they're in a different kind of struggle. And so for me, it was kind of being able to kind of pull myself out long enough to see others' struggles and being able to find ways that I could serve. And the more I think you step out into serving others, even when you feel like maybe you have nothing to give or your trials are worse or whatever, the more we step into serving others, the more our problems actually seem a little bit minimal. Like they tend to shrink, and it's kind of a magical thing that goes hand in hand with that rejoice piece for me.
You are so right. And being able to, and it's not even a comparison, oh, whoo, they've got that and I've only got this, not like that, but this awareness of, oh my gosh, we are so blessed. And that bringing that back to that self-worth of not feeling like you're getting dinged all the time because something happened to you or because you did something that maybe wasn't a great choice, but this self-worth piece of, it's only going to expand the more that you open up to others in those healthy ways and you connect with each other for the healing. You gain greater self-worth by being able to see that reality and have that awareness and be able to go, wow, things really are good. And you see things as they really are and not what we magnify in our mind and in our little small spaces. So I love that. The last one, I love that, rise triumphant again and again. And I love this thing I was just reading the other day, this talk by, can't remember his first name, but Whiting is the last name. But anyway, a religious leader. And he was saying in this talk, him and his wife are going to climb Mount Fuji. And he said it was so daunting. And he said, if we kept looking at it that way, we were just exhausted before we even took a step. But he said, all we started focusing on was the next step. We can make it to here and we'll just take this next step and then we'll take a breath and then we'll go to the next piece. And that's the only way they could do it. And when you said that, that's what that made me think of, is not looking at the big long path ahead, but taking that next step. Have you had an experience where you just thought, I just got to focus on the next step?
Yes. So for me, it was probably about 3 years ago, and my youngest at the time was around 1, and I had taken a trip to Peru with a bunch of friends and just kind of it's like a self-development group, and there were a couple options. You could choose like the tour option to take the tour bus and see a lot more, or you could do like a big hike. It wasn't the Inca Trail, it was the Lars Trek, and it was a 16,000-foot summit. And I wasn't in the prime of my health. I was carrying some extra weight from having him. I didn't know at the time, but I had undiagnosed type 2 diabetes that carried from the gestational diabetes in my pregnancy. I've had a low thyroid for quite some time. I've been diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I've done a lot to try to reverse help things and heal myself physically from all of my things. But I had these health challenges. My husband at the time was like, this is my top bucket list. Like, we're going and let's do the hike. And I'm like, okay. So I went into it just like, I don't know that now's the best time for this for me. I did a couple tiny little practice hikes to have something under my belt, right? But I was certainly not ready for what it was. And the first day of the hike, it was a 3-day backpacking hiking journey. And the first day, you know, they set up camp for us, fixed us dinner, all the amazing things that the local tour guides do. You're taking a backpack, but they're packing tents and food and everything on llamas and donkeys and things up the mountain. But as they fed us dinner, they said, "You guys did it. Day one, it was the easy day." And I started to cry. I was like, today was not easy. Like, today was the biggest challenge ever. And I sat there and I almost psyched myself out. And I was telling myself, you have legitimate health concerns. If you were to bow out today, it would be understandable. You could say to the group, "I thought I could do this. I can't, like, nobody's going to judge you." Like, and they all had this moment of like, we're all in this together. Like, everybody summits, everybody, like, we're tomorrow, let's focus on how can I help somebody else? Even if you think you have nothing to give, like, how can I help somebody else? And let's make sure we all do this. I think there was 16 of us or something. And as I heard that, there was a part of me that was like, maybe I can do it with help. Maybe, like, I wanted to do it. But to hear this, today was the easy day and tomorrow is going to be the real challenge. I really wasn't sure, but I decided with the help. And that's been something, you know, as having time as a single mom prior to that, that I asking for help was not something that came easy. And so being in a space of like, asking for help, accepting help, all of those things, like knowing that I might not can do it on my own tomorrow, but hopefully with the group's effort, like hopefully I can. And so I committed to it. I went through it. And that second day, it was tough. It was a challenge. And as I got closer and closer to the summit, it wasn't like I wanted to give up. There were times I just wanted to give up. And exactly like you said, I had an angel mentor with me that just, she saw me getting to the top, and she had struggles of her own. She was recovering from a heart condition that she had survived a heart attack and had been working to strengthen herself physically. And so she had been kind of in that woe is me moment. And then she saw an opportunity where somebody else was struggling more than she was in that moment. And she reached a hand down to me and said, she literally like pulled me up a couple steps at a time. And she's like, "One more step. You can do one more step. Don't focus on the summit, one more step." And so, and that's really when, you know, I had that experience, and then my world kind of came crashing down. And that's kind of when I added that fourth step in of like, we might think we're at the top of that mountain and we might get knocked down again, and we get to climb it all over again, but that we can, you know, we can do that. And it's one step at a time. I think I would have given up if it weren't for that last part of that journey where she was like, "Don't focus on how many steps are left. Just focus on one or two at a time. We can take a break, one or two, take a break." You know, that's literally what it was. It was very slow paced to get to that very summit. But once I reached it, it was just this overwhelming joy. And like, I did it. I overcome like the health, you know, these health challenges that I had been on a journey to overcome. Like, that was, to me, that was just a big step for me to show myself, you know, what I'm capable of. And that maybe I'm not completely healed, but I'm on a journey and my body can do more than I think it can. And, you know, it was a super cool experience for me.
And that is so perfect, because as we're wrapping up here, I love that whole bringing it all into, like you said, and if you get knocked down again, it's okay. That may feel like, what? But now you're better seasoned. You have skills, you have knowledge, you have self-worth, you have this expansion, and you will not only make it up that mountain better than you would have done before, but you'll be helping others who will be helping you. So it's not a race. It's not a how few times can we do the mountain. It's, I'm going to be climbing this mountain. I'm going to be climbing many mountains, and I'm going to get better and better and better at it. And it's going to be even more fulfilling each time. And I think that's the thing that brings us back to that expanded, increased, and deepened self-worth, is that it's not about the outcome. It's not about the moment in time. It's about who we're becoming and what we already are, this divine self-worth that we already have, like you said, that cannot be diminished, but that we can expand and add to by the choices and things that we do. I love it. If women are listening and they want to have more to do with you and get in contact with you, what's the best way to do that?
I would say probably the very best, find me on Facebook, Jennifer Starr Buss, 2 R's, 2 S's, and we can connect that way. I can share other ways of connecting, but that's probably the best and easiest. And I do some social media managing. I'm on Facebook, so it's a regular for me. And yeah, just kind of one final thought that I had is, you know, as I mentioned, like my angel helping me up the mountain is like, we're not meant to do it alone. I think sometimes we get in this space of like, oh, I'm weak if I have to ask for help, or I should be able. It's like we shame ourselves or judge ourselves, but it's okay to ask for help, and that's how we're meant, I believe, to go through this life, is with a whole support system, and whether that's biological family or, adopted in family that we find on this journey, that we're meant to do it with friends, and we're meant to do it with help, and that there's no shame in asking for help, reaching out, sharing that burden, and allowing someone to help you up that mountain sometimes when we're not able to.
Absolutely. And especially for women, that's how we're wired. I love that Quaker proverb, you lift me and I'll lift thee and we'll ascend together. Love it. Thank you so much. And thank you, sweet listeners. I hope you've enjoyed as much as I have these great thoughts today. Try one, implement it in your life. As always, if you love it, rate, review, subscribe below. And if you want more of these goodies, you can go to my other podcast and to conniesokol.com, blog posts, TV segments. I've got free joy challenges. I've got fabulous courses and programs if you want to be a disciple thought leader or a professional speaker, writer, media personality, or you just want to get your 8 areas of your life together. Got all of those. Check it out, conniesokol.com. And as always, we are here to help you take your next step to living a purpose-filled life.